The landmark case Roe v. Wade was passed by the US Supreme Court on the 22nd of January 1973, and it ruled that the Constitution protects a woman's legal right to abortion. It was a huge deal. In this video, I'm going to explain why the ruling happened, why such a monumental step forward in women's rights was overturned nearly 40 years later, and we'll take a look at the woman at the centre of the case, Jane Roe. Jane Roe's real name was Norma McCorvey. Her life up until becoming Jane Roe was not what you could call good. Her mother was a violent alcoholic, her dad left when she was young, she'd had various run-ins with the law from the age of 10, at which point she was made a ward of the state and she was sent to various boarding schools. As a teenager, she was sent to live with her mother's cousin, who, I can't say the word for what he did, as the algorithm will stop you viewing this video, but he did a terrible thing to her every day for 3 weeks, and when she told her mom, her cousin called her a liar. She was married at 16 to Woody McCorvey, but she left after he allegedly assaulted her, meaning that she had to move back in with her mother, where she had her first child, Melissa, when she was 18 years old. It was at this time that Norma began identifying as a lesbian, and she developed a severe drink and drug problem. Her mother then allegedly tricked her into signing adoption papers, giving custody of Melissa to her mum, who wasn't exactly a stable person herself. A year later, in 1966, when she was 19, Norma gave birth to her second daughter, Jennifer, who was also adopted. So when she became pregnant with her third child in 1969, Norma decided that she wanted to get an abortion. Abortion had been restricted in the United States since 1880, with some exceptions made for various health reasons. But by 1910, it was outright illegal in all states, with exceptions if it was needed to save a patient's life, but this was at the doctor's discretion. This obviously led to illegal abortions being carried out, as we all know that making something illegal doesn't mean that people will stop doing it or needing it. In 1930, these backstreet abortions accounted for 2,700 deaths, which made up 18% of all recorded maternal deaths. In 1955, Planned Parenthood held their first conference, with the Association for the Study of Abortion being founded in 1964. The thalidomide had entered the chat in the 1960s, with people being denied abortions even though they knew that their babies would suffer horrible and sometimes fatal birth defects, strengthening the public opinion in favour of legalizing abortion. California became the first to amend their prohibition on abortion, allowing hospital committees to approve requests for abortions following the trial of the San Francisco Nine, which is an excellent name. In 1966, 9 well-respected doctors were sued for carrying out abortions on women who had been exposed to rubella, which is well known to cause birth defects. But unfortunately for Norma, when she was going through her third unwanted pregnancy in 1969, she was in Texas. Despite being a young and vulnerable person, since her life wasn't in danger from a physical perspective, because mental health didn't exist at the time, you see, she wasn't eligible for a termination. After a failed attempt to get an illegal abortion, she met with attorneys Linda Coffey and Sarah Weddington, who were seeking pregnant people that wanted to get abortions in order to challenge the state's anti-abortion laws. Norma was given the pseudonym Jane Roe to preserve her anonymity, and the lawsuit was being made against her local district attorney, who is called Henry Wade, hence Roe v. Wade. The lawyer's argument was that Texas abortion laws at the time were unconstitutional, as they were a violation of a woman's right to privacy. Norma agreed to be their plaintiff on the assumption that this would mean that she could get an abortion. The hearing took 3 years, in which time Hawaii, New York, Alaska and Washington had all repealed their anti-abortion laws in 1970. On the 22nd of January 1973, the Supreme Court ruled 7-2 that anti-abortion laws were indeed a violation of the right to privacy for several reasons, such as being made to continue an unwanted pregnancy and give birth could cause psychological harm, it may force upon the woman a distressful life and future, It may tax the woman's physical and mental health, and the court created a trimester framework. They ruled that during the first trimester, a state government could not place restrictions on the ability to get an abortion beyond medical safeguards. So, for example, the procedure needed to be carried out by a licensed physician. From the second trimester onwards, abortion should be allowed, but states are able to enact medical regulations that are narrowly tailored to protecting mothers' health. They ruled that abortion should be prohibited in the third trimester unless absolutely necessary to protect the mother's life or health, as the fetus would be viable outside of the womb given the technology that's available to them in the 1970s. The court did also state that this right to privacy was not absolute and must be balanced against other government interests, such as protecting maternal health and the life of the fetus, and that is important to remember. Now, I'm sure the eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed that a pregnancy does not last 3 years. Norma gave birth to her third daughter Shirley during this period, and Shirley was put up for adoption. Shirley found out about who her mother was when she was a teenager in 1989. She had been tracked down by a journalist for the National Enquirer in what was a very ethical and healthy way to deliver this news. Shirley met her two half-sisters, Melissa and Jennifer, but she never met Norma herself. She held a lot of resentment towards her, and I can absolutely imagine why you would. The rejection, the scale of the case, it must have been absolutely overwhelming for her. After the ruling in 1973, Norma came out pretty much straight away, identifying herself as Jane Roe. She wrote 2 books about her experiences, and she volunteered at an abortion clinic for a time. In the 1990s, she befriended anti-abortion activists and later began campaigning for the repeal of the abortion rights. But in the 2020 documentary, aka Jane Roe, she claimed that she was paid off by anti-abortion groups to support their cause. She died in 2017, aged 69 of heart failure. So here's why the case has been in the news again in recent years. In 2018, Mississippi passed the Gestational Age Act, limiting abortions to 15 weeks, down from 24 weeks, as was stated in the Roe v. Wade ruling. They also attempted to issue the Heartbeat Bill in 2019, which was blocked, but this would have forbade abortion when a fetus's heartbeat could be detected, which is at around 6 to 12 weeks into a pregnancy. To put that in practical terms, that is 1 late period, maybe 2 missed periods. Within a day of the Gestation Age Act being passed, Mississippi's only abortion clinic, the Jackson Women's Health Organization, sued state officials Thomas E. Dobbs and Kenneth Cleveland, as they said that the act was unconstitutional. This led to a Supreme Court ruling on the 24th of June 2022 in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, which essentially overturned Roe v. Wade, leading to 18 states banning or severely restricting abortions once more, despite around 80% of Americans believing that abortion should be legal. How could this happen? Well, between 2016 and 2020, 3 Supreme Court justices who were against abortion rights were appointed this lifelong position. There are 12 justices, so this makes up a quarter of the positions. According to the US journal The Atlantic, in his first term, Donald Trump appointed 234 judges compared to Barack Obama's 172. It is predicted by 2040 a Trump-appointed judge will sit atop nearly every appeals court in the country. This step back in women's rights was by design, and it will last for decades. It blows my mind that women in the USA now have fewer rights than their mothers and grandmothers. It is frightening to see the world regressing in many ways when it comes to rights of your own body, which you would hope that you could rely on. I'm sorry this has been a bit of a dark episode, but living in the UK, I really do think that this is something we should know about and we can't ignore it. Anyway, thank you for watching, why not subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow.